Hey guys, this is Monday for you all, but it's Friday for me when I'm filming this. I'm trying to film this, we're having technical difficulties starting. Um, First of all, I want to backtrack a little bit and then go forward into our next chapter. First thing I want to do is one of the many things I don't like about LMS is it's hard for me to discuss when a lot of you miss one on a quiz to immediately discuss it with you. So I want to backtrack a little bit to quiz 35, question number 8. Question 8 was, what became a symbol of the prosperous 20s? Understandably, a lot of you missed it because it's hard for you to understand that the symbol of the prosperity of the prosperous 20s was the automobile. I know it's hard for you all to wrap your brain around that because you look out in your driveway right now, and I'm sure there's 2, 3, 4 cars sitting there, depending on how many drivers you have in the house. But of the 20s, that would not have been the case. My grandmother was born in 1914, and I can remember her kind of bragging that she went to school every way there was possible for that time period, which would have included horse and buggy, train. There for a little while, she apparently went to a school where she actually caught a train and went part of the way to get to school, her and her brother, and by automobile eventually. So the automobile was a sign of the Roaring Twenties. Kind of the only reason why the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression was mentioned in this chapter was just to show how all of that was taking place in the United States affected the world. If you remember from the 6th grade book, the chapter that says that was on the 1900s in America points out that in 1900, the United States was one of the 5 big world powers, major world powers, which was amazing because we were the youngest of all the 5 countries that were a world power. We live in a day and age where anything that happens anywhere in the world affects everybody. I mean, we're sitting at our houses trying to figure out LMS because of a pandemic that started in China. But back in the time period we're talking about, this is just the beginning of really seeing how things that happened in the United States affected things that happened in Europe, and things that happened in Europe affected the United States. Before this time period, it had always been that we were separated by the big pond, as some people call the Atlantic Ocean. So what happened on either side didn't affect each other that much because it took too long to get across. As technology progresses, more and more what happens on either side of the Atlantic Ocean does affect both sides. I think it was Michael, but I'm not positive, made a really good observation on LMS. He did not realize that Hoover was president during the Great Depression, which is not surprising. Hoover was president during the beginning of the Great Depression. When the Great Depression began, I love classic country, as you all know, and I love that song from Alabama, Sweet Potato Pie, because it makes the mention of, I got 2 people back here motioning at me. Just speak.
Hi, Cotton.
Hi, Cotton is the technical name of the song. Anyway, because it makes the point in that song of we were so poor that we couldn't tell. Even before the Great Depression, when the stock market crashed in October of 1929, a lot of people, their lives didn't change. For some people, their lives changed drastically. People who had bought things on credit, people who were involved in the stock market and it crashed, things changed drastically. Hoover, as we'll talk about more next year, wanted to try to fix the Great Depression by people helping each other out. When it came time for him to be reelected, he lost to Roosevelt because Roosevelt said he would fix everything. Not getting into that debate. Becca, as you will read, doesn't like Roosevelt, doesn't like big government. Some people believe Roosevelt was amazing and wonderful and got rid of the Great Depression. Some people believe he was an idiot who caused us all kinds of problems by making the government too big, getting us in debt, and that it was World War II that got us out of the Great Depression. I'm not going to say what my opinion is. Just throwing that out there. That's kind of the two extremes. Chapter 24 goes back a little bit. Chapter 24 is actually a chapter I really like. Chapter 24 goes from 1940 to 1990, the Cold War. The Cold War began pretty much right after WW2 and goes forward to late 80s, early 90s. Interesting, one of the reasons why I like this chapter so much is because talk to grandparents, aunts, uncles, great aunts, uncles, to parents, and they can tell you about living through a lot of this, what was going on. I can remember the end of the Cold War, and I'd say most of your parents are in that generation. Interesting time to be alive. We got to backtrack a little bit and get a couple of dates straight in our mind, kind of an order of how things happened. In February the 4th, 1945, you have the Yalta Conference. On page 372 of your book, you see the most famous picture of the Yalta Conference. Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin meeting together. Actually, let's backtrack a little bit before that. Let's talk World War II. If you'll remember, at the beginning of before World War II, Germany and Roosevelt had gotten together and made the Nazi-Soviet pact, which said that they would together basically take over the world, starting with Poland, and that they would not attack each other. Hitler goes back on that and attacks the Soviet Union. And after that, Stalin was like, okay, I'm obviously not for Germany now. I'm not going to be on their side. And they come to us, the United States and Great Britain, wanting help. And we kind of decided, let's keep our enemies closer, because Stalin was ruthless, but we didn't realize how ruthless. I really like this book I have, The Cold War. Occasionally I'll pull it out and read some to go with this chapter too. But the little box here that has with Stalin. Stalin rose to absolute power in the Soviet Union following Lenin's death in 1924. By 1936, he was in full control, eliminating all potential rivals in a series of staged trials. Although Lenin had created the system of concentration camps, under Stalin, millions of people were imprisoned or shot. Millions of others died in famines he caused, particularly in Ukraine. Stalin justified his tyranny on the ground that was necessary for the crash industrialization needed for survival. And then it says on the next page, only gradually did it dawn on Western leaders that Stalin was hostile. Stalin considered World War II not a disaster, but a great opportunity. So, in February 4th, 1945, war is winding down. They realize that it's almost over. So the big three get together at Yalta, trying to figure out, now what? Because this union, they realize, isn't going to work. You've got two capitalist democratic countries, and then you've got Stalin and Russia. So they've got to decide, how are things going to go after here? So at Yalta, the Soviet Union agrees to fight against Japan, because that war's going to go on for a while, and they realize it. And they begin to discuss what's going to happen after the war's over. How is Europe going to be divided up? Roosevelt then dies in April. Victory in Europe is in May. So when Roosevelt dies, Truman becomes president. So this is what you got to get straight in your head, and I want to make sure that you get. If you zone out on a lot of this, get this straight. Hoover was president during the beginning of the Great Depression. Roosevelt was president during most of the Great Depression and most of World War II, but it was Truman that was president when the war ended, both in Europe and in Japan, and it was Truman who made the decision to drop the atomic bomb. Then from there, they have another meeting. This time Truman's there. This one is in July. Churchill, Truman, and Stalin all meet together to decide exactly how Germany is going to be divided up. Guaranteed being that nothing like WW2 would happen again. One of the things that Stalin agreed was to hold free elections in Poland, which his armies had liberated and occupied. A few months later, they meet together in Potsdam in newly defeated Germany. Stalin held the promised elections, but he rigged them in favor of the communists, ending any hope of Polish democracy for over 40 years. So all of this is happening in 45. In February of 46, Stalin gives a speech that revives the pre-war claim that communism and capitalism are incompatible, basically ending the wartime truce and beginning the Cold War. So, that's what we're getting ready to start, is the Cold War. Before we start reading chapter 24, your assignment is to go to the link that I will have on the LMS website and read that article and answer the questions that I'll have on the LMS website that goes with it. Those questions won't be due to Friday. It won't take you a week to do it, but I'm giving you to Friday. See you tomorrow.